G'day viewers, my name is Michael and welcome back to SingleRacer. Now today I'd like to give you a review, or probably more accurately just an analysis of the program called Content Manager. And you might be wondering, well, why am I doing this when so many people have done it before me? And that's because it comes off the back of a brilliant review by the channel Gamer Muscle, and I'll have a link to that review in the description. But why am I then doing a review? Well, basically because I can sum up his review in a couple of sentences, which is like, get it, get it, get it, this is brilliant, you got to get it, get it, get it. That's basically the review. But the pattern that I've noticed with my favourite high quality channels is they're all, and I'm being very genuine here, they're all very intelligent people as well. So I'm talking Gamer Muscle, Ferrari Man 601, Sim Racing 604, Chris Hay. They all have probably a great education or very high intelligence in the way they deliver their content. But now, without being disrespectful in any way to my own subs, I'm definitely not in that intelligent class. So what I wanted to do in this review was give you the alternate review. In other words, kind of what it's like from a beginner point of view. So if you don't have this program and you're not that tech savvy with different things. Now, mind you, I'm a tweaker, so I've gone back to the old DOS days. I've had every Windows version almost imaginable. And in every version of Windows, I've almost tweaked every setting that you possibly can. None of my Windows are all set to default. So I'm used to that tweaking, but it was overwhelming for me. So for beginners that maybe just hear, oh, this is great, you got to get it. I want to kind of explain what you might be in for if you do get it and you're not so experienced, given that my channel is more for beginners and intermediate drivers. So if you haven't had that experience, let me explain and walk you through. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to give you 5 negatives and 5 positives, and I might throw a few extras in, and we'll just talk about the program in general. And so let me start with negative number 1. But I have to say right off the bat, this program is incredible. The amount of stuff you can do, and especially kind of what you would argue is hidden stuff, is just amazing. But it's important for me to get across that the 5 negatives that I'm going to give are really nitpicky. I'm talking, just trying to find something that I would call negative, but I still want to give that balanced overview. So the very first thing that I find about the program is it's extremely overwhelming. And now, in my personal life, when I'm trying to explain something to a person that doesn't understand it, so in this case we'll say sim racing, I try and use an analogy that they might better understand. Now, in this case, maybe you might not understand it so well, but I liken this program to editing software. And I'll give you the 2 examples, is what I use, Sony Vegas or Adobe Premiere. And what I mean by that is that for a beginner, it can be overwhelming to use. And, you've got, look at this, you've got buttons everywhere, labels, tags, you look at it and you just don't know what's going on. But what happens is the program is not necessarily unintuitive. So as you start to unlock things, you go, oh, this is brilliant. You're not actually put off by the program, but the program has so much depth that it takes you a while to get to know it. And that's where it's overwhelming. Now, if we just take this page as an example, you've got so many options just on this one page, but then you've also got your typical practice, time attack, race. Everything else has a particular setting which you might be used to in Assetto Corsa, but then of course you've got challenges up here, live, online, so you've got your typical online events to race other people, and then you even have more tags underneath. So if we come back, even though this one page might be pretty obvious, there's still a lot to absorb. And then we go to the next 2, which are pretty obvious. So lap times, results, and media, which is your replays. are all straightforward. But then when we get to content, you go, oh, holy smoke, look at all those tags at the bottom. And then, so you might just click on one, and, or say if we bring up the showroom as an example, and then you've got all these options at the top that have even more settings. So you go, oh man, this is so overwhelming. But it is fairly logical. You just have to take the advice of humble George. You just got to take it in small chunks and go through it slowly. So it's just a matter of realizing that it is overwhelming, but then slowly understanding it piece by piece. Okay, so now negative number 2 can be put under a kind of an expression of where is everything? And what I find fascinating here, because I'm not maybe the person to answer this, because you would need someone who's never actually played Assetto Corsa before, because I would argue that when we go to Assetto Corsa, this style of going up where all the settings are grouped together, and you just go up, so you have your replays and you have the driving aspect, and especially all the menus up here, the way they're put together seem logical to me. But what I can't discount is that this is after many years of using the program, so it might just seem logical to me because I'm so familiar with it. But if we go now back to Content Manager, the thing that struck me most was, where is everything? But as much as this is a negative, I meant it in a good way, in that there's just so much to this program that initially you find it difficult to find things. So if I just give you a good example, is I go, okay, I want to now race from single screen to VR. So where is the settings? Okay, we'll go to settings. Okay, now where do I find it? So, and it's that thing of like editing software where you go, the program is brilliant, it has everything included, but it just takes a while when you're beginning to find it. So, and I've even seen humble George, who I think is the best operator that I know of channels that I follow, who know the program, who still go, oh, now hang on, where was that again? So I think it's under Assetto Corsa. There it is. Okay, video. And it's just, oh, look at that. And you go, holy moly. Gee, that's a lot to take in. So I do want to stress that the program is fantastic, but I just want you to be aware that if you've never dealt with this before and you want to get it, that you're in for some learning. And I've actually had to set aside some time to try and learn it all. And now we conveniently come to the third negative, and that's to do with the video settings. And again, I want to stress that I'm nitpicking here, because you could quite easily work it out. But if we now flick over to Assetto Corsa again, I think most people generally, and even beginners, understand the principles, because it's so much in first-person shooters as well, of having these kind of descriptions. So if we go to world detail, we've got maximum, very high, low, and medium, just pretty obvious. But so what I don't like, and like I said, I'm nitpicking here, but I don't like the fact that Content Manager use numbers to represent this. So in this case, if we go to reflection resolution, we've got the sizes. Now the sizes are good, and they tell you, what the resolutions are, but this is the equivalent of, maximum, high, medium and low. But you have to just kind of pause for a sec. So if we just take shadows resolution as an example, I have to look how many are here. I have to physically work this out. So if that's low, then maybe that's medium, or is that high low, or is that medium? That's the kind of thing I don't like. That's very confusing. I don't understand why they've chosen that. But in fairness to them, this is the thing where I use the analogy of editing software. Is that for experts, they might prefer this. So someone like Chris Hay might actually prefer to say, okay, I'm using 4K on a 4K monitor. I understand what all this resolution means to me. It makes more sense. So from that point of view, I just mean it in a negative, maybe for beginners, where you just understand what high and medium and low means rather than have numbers represent that. Okay, so now we come to negative number 4, and I can tell you right off the bat that this is absolutely nitpicking, and all this is my OCD. But I just find again, if we go back to Assetto Corsa or the Assetto Corsa menu, I've noticed that in their replays, you do a new replay and it goes to the very top. So there's my last race that I featured in my last video. It just makes sense to me that it is at the very top. And so it's just nitpicking to me that if we come to media here, that what appears to happen is that the replay that is your latest one goes to the bottom, and you know, it's just call it OCD, but I just find that very strange. But the upsetting part is, as great as this program is, I haven't found a way. I've checked all the tabs and looked for hidden buttons, but I can't find a way to reverse that. So although I'm calling that a negative, it really is OCD nitpicking. So it doesn't affect you in any way how hard it is to go to the bottom, but it's just something that bugs me, so I'm calling it a negative for now. And now we come to the final so-called official negative, and but I want to leave this open to the comments section, in that if you hear any of these negatives and you know how to fix these problems, please just write a comment underneath, especially Humble George, if you know what the answer is. But if I group two of the negatives, so the first negative is negative number 2 is, okay, where do I find it? But just to give you the example, is I think I go to Drive, and then you can change car, but you've got manage car. So you open this page up to manage the car itself. But there's one, I think it's in Showroom here. And I think Humble George said you go to the gears here, and you've got the background color, for example. And you can change so many aspects of all this. So background color, and one thing that I do like is whatever the color is shows up here on the bar. That's excellent. So use these two as an example. But there doesn't seem to be, so I had something set at all these numbers here. Hopefully you can see that the mouse there. So under background I had everything set to F. You know, and I've changed, so just as an example there, if I change it, the number changes. But if I muck up, I can't seem to find a set back to default. And that's what maybe that's coming. This program is getting updated constantly, and that's one fantastic thing, is if you get the program, you constantly get updates. They don't just say, here's the program, and if it's got a set amount of bugs, we won't be fixing it. It's brilliant. But so maybe that's something they'll work on. But for now, there doesn't seem to be a reset or default button that you can select to bring this back to FFF. Now, I haven't tried this, but let me just try to type. Okay, well, there we go. So there's one thing, and this is what I mean by just the sheer learning. Now, funnily enough, I didn't check how many numbers there are. Okay, so there's 6. So now that's a great example of my tweaking thing that made me think about that. My brother and I have a joke about being like a scientist, and you use a scientific approach and eliminate one thing and then try and work on another thing. So I was able to figure that one out, but for total beginners, it would be great to have a default key. So whether you call that a negative or not, I'll leave up to you. And now we come to what I'm calling a bonus negative, or a couple of bonus negatives grouped together, and I'll do this for the positive as well. But this is essentially because I'm a creature of habit, and I want to stress again, this program is outstanding, but because it's so outstanding that once you get it, you're kind of arguably locked into the program. I mean, maybe there's no reason why you would go back to the Assetto Corsa menu, but I do want to show you a couple of negatives, and that's because I'm a creature of habit. So if we go to settings here as an example, here's my Oculus Rift setting. And because I'm a creature of habit, I have it sitting on my head. And once I go back here and I select the car and track I want and all the settings, whether it's a race or a hot lap, I bring the mouse down and get ready to click on go. But I bring the headset down because I want the headset tracking to be correct in game. And if I have it sitting on my head and enter the game, it's all in the wrong perspective. So what I've done is I've deliberately closed off Assetto Corsa, but also closed off Steam. So here is the first negative grouped with the second one. And if I just show you that as an example, here's the brilliant weather app by Peter Bowes called Soul. And look at all these weathers that you can select. And what you can do is you can just run your mouse over each of the selections, and it will give you an example. Just absolutely phenomenally brilliant, and that's what this program and apps like Soul have to offer. But just being honest from that negative point of view, that once I select this and I go to, I've got my headset on ready to go, and I go and I bring the headset down, and this is what happens. I've got the headset down and it tries to start up Steam because Steam hasn't started yet. And I'm going, I'm sitting there going, what's going on? Why isn't it starting? Why isn't it starting? Lift my head. Oh, that's right. I have to start up Steam first. So it's a frustrating negative that you've got to always remember to start up Steam. So let me just pause it here because I want to type in my password, and I'll show you the second negative in relation to Soul. And so now we come to the second part of this bonus negative, so to speak. And, I want to stress how fantastic this program is. But if we just look at those clouds there from Soul, and, like I said, we just see look, this thunderstorms, everything, just tornado, just incredible the amount that you select. But the negative is, if you're ever in a situation where you go, you know what, I don't want to start up Content Manager, I just want to go into the Assetto Corsa, save time. But the trouble is that, as far as I know, that when you come to the effects settings here and you have Soul here, see, there's no way other than your general effects to select the clouds you want. So what I'm getting at is the slight negative, and again, nitpicking, you have to be committed to Content Manager. But is it worth being committed to Content Manager? Abso-bloody-lutely. It is fantastic. So now let's move on to the positives. Okay, so let's start with positive number one. And when I say positives, I'm talking about, as far as I know, things that you can do in Content Manager that you can't do in Assetto Corsa. Now, admittedly, I'm still learning the program. I've only had it for less than a week, so I'm still getting my head around it. Maybe you can do this in Assetto Corsa. If you can, please correct me. I'm always happy to be corrected. But as far as I'm aware, you can't do this in Assetto Corsa. Now, what you can do in Assetto Corsa is you can do your controller settings. So if we take three examples, you can save here at the bottom presets that you can in Assetto Corsa for your wheel settings. So if we talk about three examples, so you could have automatic to manual, you could have KERS or no KERS, or you could have, if you're lucky enough to own a wheel, pedals to gear shift, manual gear shift. So if we go to Assetto Corsa, this is exactly what I have here down the bottom. So you can save your different settings and you just flick between them and load them. But if we go back up to video, as far as I know, what you can't do here is you can't save your video settings. So when I get in VR, because I can't play VR at maximum and get 90 frames per second, is I lower all these. So I'm constantly going VR down, single screen up, VR down, single screen up, etc, etc. But what you can do is, if you come here to video, if you also have saved presets. So let's look at that example. I've got the single screen, and I've got the single screen maximized. So all those maximized settings I've got up full bore, because I've got a powerful enough PC to run it, but not in VR. So I just load the VR setting and everything drops down, including changing it to Oculus Rift. So it's just so easy to flick between the two, high maximum settings and lower VR settings, and you could have like middle settings for VR in say for example in a Hotlap, and then ultimate low settings where you got 36 cars you're racing against. So even with that you could have multiple settings. Absolutely fantastic. And now positive number 2 is, if you like to take screenshots of cars, either as a creator or for just general wallpapers, you can add multiple cars into the same screenshot that you can't do with Assetto Corsa. Now here we tie in a bit where it's like that thing of where am I, or I'm confused, I'm overwhelmed. So I know if I go to drive, I've got change car, and I know if I go to manage car, I go to that manage car option. Now it's simply under content and the very first one, cars, here, but it's an example of where you can get kind of lost as to where you are. But as an example here, we have the typical Assetto Corsa showroom, and that you can actually add, if I just show you. So you can go to race department and get all these extra different showrooms that are just, you know, some great scenery, and you can just put cars, so you got like a beach, this kind of thing. And that'll work in Assetto Corsa. But the advantage over the Assetto Corsa showroom is you've got Content Manager showroom. And if we go to that as the example, is then you've got all these other options. So here's a great example where I asked Humble George, hey, you did something. And he said, oh, you changed the gear icon. And because they were all in white, they were very clear to me, but I didn't even realize these kind of grayed out options. So you had, you know, quality, scenes, lights, all these things that just kind of overwhelm you at the start, but the things you can do in this is just amazing. So in this case, if we want to add a car to this showroom, and by the way, that's my Humble George SingleRacer Special Edition Lotus there. I'll just go in a bit closer. Absolutely fantastic work that he did on that car, spending hours and hours and hours doing it. So thank you again, Humble. But if we go to the cars icon here, we have add a new car. So if we click on that, we can select a particular car that we might want, and it will be added into the showroom. And you can do this multiple times. Select any group of cars and just put them in the showroom, and then you just come to the screenshots here, which is the camera, and take very, very high quality photos of these car groups that you specifically want to join together for a particular race as a creator, or just for a like I said, a wallpaper for your windows. You know, just whatever you your imagination can think of, you can do. So another fantastic feature. So let's move on to advantage number 3. Okay, so positive number 3 is just a simple step back from where we were with taking the photo. And that is that you can actually access all the parts of the car if you want to start getting into the modding. Now, but here it ties in with one of the negatives is where I get completely lost, and I had to ask the resident content manager expert, Humble George, how to work this out. And that's because here I have the showrooms for Assetto Corsa that I can download from race department. So these are all different showrooms that show up in Assetto Corsa without even having to use Content Manager. But under Content Manager, only these showrooms came up, and I couldn't figure out, well, how come I can download these race department showrooms but they're not showing up? So I asked Humble George, and he showed me, okay, well, what it is, and again, this is, if I use the expression, one of the negatives, where the hell am I, is that he told me to click on the gear icon, and I saw these 5 icons at the top. But this is where the analogy of the video editing comes into play, because in video editing, it's like you can have something that's 5 layers deep and you don't even know it exists until you get so familiar, maybe 6 months after you're using the program, and you go, oh, I didn't know it could do that, and you just get better and better. But here is the same thing. So I saw these 5 icons at the top because they're all coloured at white, but I didn't realise there was another 5 underneath that affects all the different parts of the features that it has, and your mind explodes. But just this is an example of where the naming just seems really odd, because you have seen here, okay, but really I think this, which is seen, should be showroom, because this is where you've got all the extra showrooms that you've downloaded from race department. So if we go to the bottom one, which is a common one that Humble George uses, you've got the showroom, see? And this is what I mean by the layers. So now I'm in the showroom because I clicked the gears and I came down to scene, but I had to highlight scene first. Complicated. But to actually start learning how to mod the car, I then have to go over to car, and then, but suddenly now I've got access to the things that I can highlight and figure out what parts make up a mod car. So I can click the driver, and I can click the crew, and the driver and crew will appear. I can click on, for instance, the lights, and have I picked the bad car for that? Yes, I have. So let's try the brake lights. Hopefully, yep, the brake lights work. So there's an example. And now the doors won't open. This is an Uncle M car, but we'll try. No, the doors won't open. But maybe the wipers might work. So here you've got wipers. So in a Kunos car, you'd have the left door open, and when you click on right door, or it's one of these two, you get the boot and whatever other feature of that car opens. Now, unfortunately, I've picked a non-Kunos car, which makes it harder to show. But you even then have the modding aspects. So you have access to where the suspension or the fuel tank lies, or flames. Here have we got the exhaust somewhere there, so it might show you where the flames come out. So I don't think there are any flames on this car, so maybe it doesn't show, but on some cars you'll get where the flames show. And the wheels, so you can click on the wheels and learn how to change them. And believe me, if you want to know all this stuff, just subscribe to Humble George. He'll show you how it all works, but absolutely fantastic. So that's a highlight that when you really want to get into the modding stuff, if that's your desire, then that's a feature in this program as well. Okay, now positive number 4 is an absolute beauty for creators. Now, most creators probably know this, but I'm just showing beginners some of the features. So a great example is that here, if I show you this car, which is my favourite car in Assetto Corsa, the Abarth 595, or it's a variation of the 595, but here it's a special one done by a channel called Unknown Sissenegg, featuring the SingleRacer Special Edition R-Bath. Absolutely fantastic. And I always joke with Ferrari Man 601 that I can beat him in an F1 car using this particular R-Bath. So, as an example, I set up a race and I wanted to use the skin of the R-Bath, but what I realised is that when I went racing in Assetto Corsa picked the skin that it wanted to use. It didn't even use the colour, and I've done this at least half a dozen times, that I particularly chose when I picked a car. So I choose that skin. The skin shows when I go into the menu, but it won't pick that skin when it goes racing. Well, apparently now you can say, okay, I've selected race here in the menu. I've selected race. I'm going to add the cars I want to race. So here I am in the Race Sim Studios menu, and I have access to all the Race Sim Studios. Or I can go do it by brands, just like you do in Assetto Corsa. You pick all the brands, pick Race Sim Studios, come to the Formula RSS 2000 V10, best mod car that I've played in a long time, but I want to make sure I get the right skin. And this is what I mean by, again, the analogy of editing software, that it's just so deep, but once you start to learn, it becomes automatic and you can figure this stuff out. So you click on Detailed Settings, there's the Formula car. You not only can pick, so you can let the game choose a random skin, which is what Assetto Corsa does by default, but you can't change that. But now you can say, hang on, I want to race the Ferrari or the Jaguar skin by choice, but you can also select its strength or aggression. So say you want 3 cars that are slower than an F1 car, but you want to include an F1 car, you could probably just specifically slow down that particular car strength and then add it, and they'll be all more grouped together with the parameters that you pick. Absolutely incredible. And now let's move on to the final positive that is just absolutely incredible. Okay, so the final positive, as far as what I'm calling the official positives, is the fact that one of the reasons I didn't get it for so long was I was worried about, because I was watching Humble George, he's one of my favourite channels, and he's showing you how to tweak all these settings, change car specs, change the driver colour, change the car colour, all this kind of stuff. And I was thinking, well, where do you save all this stuff, and does it interfere with the actual Assetto Corsa sort of main menu? And now what I've realised, and this is a huge advantage, is say you do 5 changes, totally random, complete different changes, like your controller, say your VR headset, graphics, video settings changes, and you save all these as presets. And you go, but what if I lose all this stuff? I've done all this work. So if you are a creator, you might already know that Assetto Corsa has 2 places that it saves stuff. So you have the main Assetto Corsa folder that you install stuff into. So like your car mods and your track mods, and that's where in Steam you install Assetto Corsa 2. But if you come over here, you actually have a separate Assetto Corsa folder, which is in your Windows directory under Users, Michael in my case, but it's just your name, and Documents. Right, so if you click on Documents, and there you have the Assetto Corsa folder, and what that saves is all your records. You see your save replays, your records, your high scores, all things like that. Well, Content Manager has its own separate thing. Now, you install Content Manager into the normal default Assetto Corsa. It's just a small exe file. But then when you do all your presets, you can come over here. So it's under App Data, Local, and then here it is here, AC Tools, Content Manager. And that would be all your presets, all your saves, any changes you'd like to make that you save, and you can actually back this up. So if you're like me, now you got to be that way inclined in that I'm one of those external hard drive guys that have, like 6 gig of backup hard drives, and I back everything up just to make sure I've got a second copy of it. So if you're that type of person, you know that when you install Content Manager and make lots of changes, you can actually back that up and save all your preset settings. So that'll end the 5 official advantages of the program. Let's now look at a couple of bonus features as well. Okay folks, now to finally wrap up this particular video, let me cover 3 bonus positives that are just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, there's so many positives here that I just don't know them all yet, or just can't cover them because there's just not enough time. But the 3 bonus positives is, for a start, one thing that was worrying me also about getting Content Manager is, would I lose the Assetto Corsa manager? And the answer, or menu I should say, the Assetto Corsa menu, and the answer to that is no. So I can have both Content Manager and Assetto Corsa menu running at the same time, and they'll just work perfectly together, and I don't even have to start Content Manager. I can just start Assetto Corsa the way I normally do, just keeping in mind though that you don't get the advantages like you do here, where you can go down to Soul and hand pick the kind of cloud things you want using the Soul app. So those kind of features might not be available in the normal Assetto Corsa menu. The second advantage is a thing with, if I go up to here, now I haven't tested all these to work, but I assume they possibly could, but specifically I know for sure because I have tested this, is if you pick Windy Soul and then you increase the wind from 0 like I have here up to 7, or 7 is sort of a realistic thing, the clouds will move across your screen in a slow, beautiful way. And of course, the higher you lift this, the clouds will go abnormally fast, and they're just incredible. And it looks fantastic. So I assume that could work for anything with the clouds, but I haven't quite tested it yet. So it's just too much, like I said, to absorb. But I know this works for sure. Now, the other advantage is you also have the wind direction. Now, again, I haven't tested this, but I'd be almost certain that if you had it set to north, when I get on a track like Longford, the clouds move from left to right. But I'd almost guarantee that if you set it to south, the clouds would move in the opposite direction, meaning that you could handpick a track, decide where the sun and everything sets, and then best manipulate the cloud movement to take advantage of your video looking the best it possibly could be. It's just a minefield of features and functions that this program has. And now to finally wrap up, the final feature, and I did promise a channel called Days of Thunder, starting with F as in fun, Days of Thunder, that I would show him a night to day transition and how it works, but I just didn't realize how long I would talk for, me being a waffler. So rather than show it in this video, I'm going to show the next video. I'm going to show it right at the start. But essentially what you do is you set the time, and here's your 24-hour cycle. So you have from midnight to the other midnight, or like coming up to midnight at the other end. You can set, so if we set it at night time, and then you just want to do 3 to 5 laps of a race. Well, of course, because it works on natural time, it won't get light before you finish. So what you can do is you click on these 3 little dots here, and you have the time multiplier. So you change it to something like 100, and the sun will come up much quicker. And if you set it to say 999, you probably could get a 24-hour cycle in a couple of minutes. So I haven't tested that out, but it'd be interesting to find out. So I hope that you enjoyed this kind of behind the scenes. It's not really a review, but I just wanted to give an overall perspective of the positives and the negatives of this great program. And would I recommend it? Absolutely. It's just brilliant. So this is Michael signing out for SingleRacer. I'll catch you next time. See you later, and we'll go racing using all these features in the next video. See ya.